Hi, and welcome to this week's news currents. Today is Wednesday, November 27th, 2024. Trump's deportation vow alarms Texas construction industry. Clear signals President-elect Donald Trump plans to make good on his campaign pledge to deport millions of undocumented immigrants in his second term has sparked concerns among some in Texas's business and economic sectors who say mass deportations could upend some of the state's major industries that rely on undocumented labor. Chief among them, the booming construction industry. It would devastate our industry. We wouldn't finish our highways. We wouldn't finish our schools, said Stan Merrick, CEO of Merrick, a Houston-based commercial and residential construction giant. Housing would disappear. I think they'd lose half their labor. Talk of a mass roundup comes as Texas is booming. Texas cities regularly appear on lists of the country's fastest growing communities. And construction cranes and workers donning safety vests are common sights in most major cities. That Texas relies on undocumented labor is one of the state's open secrets, despite Republicans' tough on immigration stances. In 2022, more than 500,000 immigrants worked in the construction industry, according to a report by the American Immigration Council and Texans for Economic Growth. Nearly 60% of that workforce was undocumented. The state needs to leverage both the U.S.-born and immigrant talent to fill construction jobs that power the Texas economy, the report notes. It's not remotely practical to round up and deport everybody, said economist Ray Perryman, the president and CEO of the Waco-based Perryman Group. He said the reason Texans need so many immigrant laborers is simple. The Texas workforce isn't large enough to keep pace with its growth. That Texas relies on undocumented labor is one of the state's open secrets, despite Republicans' tough on immigration stances. In 2022, more than 500,000 immigrants worked on the construction industry, according to a report by the American Immigration Council and Texans for Economic Growth. Nearly 60% of that workforce was undocumented. The state needs to leverage both U.S.-born and migrant talent to fill construction jobs that power the Texas economy, the report notes. It's not remotely practical to round up and deport everybody, said the economist Ray Perryman, the president and CEO of the Waco-based Perryman Group. He said that the reason Texans need so many immigrant laborers is simple. The Texan workforce isn't large enough to keep pace with its growth. Like Merrick, he worries that a massive roundup could have a chilling effect on the Texas economy. And we simply don't have an economic structure that can sustain that. There are more undocumented people working in Texas right now than there are unemployed people in Texas, Perryman said. A sustainable workforce, he added, will be harder to come by as the population wanes. The bottom line is, if you just look across the country, our birth rates are at historic lows, our population growth is at historic lows. We just simply are not making enough people, so to speak, to sustain our economy, Perryman said. Trump's sweeping campaign pledges likely to have support of Republican border hawks in Texas, where a state-led border mission called Operation Lone Star started in 2021 and has cost taxpayers more than $11 billion. The effort has included deployment of thousands of Texas National Guard and state police officers to the border, construction of barriers that include fencing, walls, and razor wire on or near the banks of the Rio Grande and a floating buoy barrier in the river. All signs show Trump will try to make good on his deportation promises. He has tapped Tom Homan, Trump's former acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, who has also served on that official capacity under former President Barack Obama. Trump has also named Stephen Miller, a deputy chief of staff for policy and advisor on Homeland Security issues. Miller is served in Trump's previous administration and was the architect behind the zero tolerance policy that led to family separations after parents who entered the country illegally were incarcerated. Meanwhile, the state's undocumented workforce is bracing for the second round of Trump policies. Veronica Carasaco is an undocumented immigrant from Honduras who has worked as a house painter for the Mesquite-based company for 12 years. She said that she lived through one Trump administration. He seems more intent to follow through on his threats this time around. His administration is going to be more forceful than it was in the past. I don't think there's anything holding him back now, and it does make me a little sad. It makes me frustrated and worried. I am a single mom. I have 3 children, said Carasaco, whose husband died in 2022. She said she's had to have difficult conversations with her children. One who says she is in the country with legal status, and 2 who are U.S. citizens, about to prepare if she's deported to Honduras. They've sought legal advice about obtaining power of attorney for a relative should she be sent back. Imagine it. I am a father and a mother. They would never want to be separated from their mother, she said. Carasaco also pushed back on the rhetoric about immigrants taking jobs from American citizens or legal residents. She says she does work that few line up to do. I didn't come to take an opportunity from anybody. What happens is that no one wants to do the dirty work. No one wants to do the hard work, she said. As Trump continues to take steps to implement his agenda, economist Perry Mintz said the incoming administration could scale back its plans. It's easy to have a soundbite that you can say at a rally or on a bumper sticker, but to translate that to policy is difficult. And you normally see presidents move in the direction of what they campaigned about, but not all the way. And I think that's what you'll see here, he said. Marek, the construction mogul, said Trump's threats could spur Congress to pass meaningful immigration laws for the first time in decades. The thing that Trump is doing that Obama couldn't do is he's challenging Congress. Either you fix this or I'll fix it. And that's the way we got to look at this, he said. Marek said Trump can solve the problem by backing a guest worker program similar to the 2012 Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA. Applicants can live and work in the country legally, but only after agreeing to background checks, paying a fine or application fee, and working for a company that pays payroll taxes. It's so simple. The right likes it because we've identified the people for national security and they're paying taxes. The left likes it because we've basically given them a legal status and we've given them the protection of wage and hour laws, he said. So far, Trump has signaled he's intent on carrying out this campaign promise. He recently reiterated that he's prepared to use the U.S. military to assist for mass deportations. And the Texas General Land Office recently offered the incoming Trump administration more than 1,400 acres of South Texas land to construct deportation facilities. Earlier this week, another Trump ally, Republican Texas Governor Greg Abbott, said during an appearance on Fox News that the Lone Star stands ready to assist the incoming administration's efforts. We just want to make sure that the Trump administration understands. We are here to help, whether it to be deny illegal entry, whether it be to arrest people who are here illegally, whether it be to assist in the deportation process, Abbott said. Fold paper, insert lens. This $2 microscope changes how kids see the world. 8-year-old S. Hariraj is a Foldscope devotee. He used it to look at the milk from the cows his parents raise. Though the milk looks creamy, the Foldscope reveals a world of microorganisms. It has to be boiled and cooled before we can drink it, he says. The Foldscope taught me that the world we see around us can be very different than we assume. It's like having a third eye. The 8-year-old is talking about a device that is a fully functional paper microscope. Everything you need to construct the Foldscope comes in a pouch. A sheet of paper with 4 main parts to punch out to build a microscope. They're waterproof and tear resistant, and is a similar paper that you use for currency notes. The main part of the Foldscope is one long sheet of paper. Half of this is blue, that's the front portion, and the other half is yellow, which you fold to become the back of the Foldscope. Magnets stick to each end, holding front and back together. There's a lens in the pouch, and a hole to indicate where it should go. Once assembled, the Foldscope is the size of a bookmark. It's small enough to fit in a pocket and can magnify up to 140 times. Each unit costs around $2 to make. The Foldscopes are offered for free to kids in lower income countries. Various upgraded models with extras are sold as well, earning money for the charitable endeavor. The Foldscope is the invention of MacArthur Genius Grant winner Manu Prakash and his colleague Jim Cybulski. It made its debut about 10 years ago, and as young as Hirsch observes, it is a game changer. The inspiration came when Prakash, 44, was growing up in the northern Indian city of Meerut. Now as an associate professor in the Department of Bioengineering at Stanford University, he recalls the afternoon in 6th grade when he and his classmates were stumped by a single test question. We were asked to draw a microscope, he says. None of us could because we hadn't seen one before. The Foldscope comes in a kit and can be assembled in a few deft folds. Growing up, I knew that the spirit of exploration was critical to the study of science, says Prakash. But in order to develop that spirit, you have to have the right kind of tools. And for many, access is impossible. Over the years, Prakash experimented with building microscopes, even stealing lenses from his brother's eyeglasses. In 2014, at Stanford, he collaborated with a PhD student in his lab, Jim Cybulski, and together they created a microscope using origami or folding techniques to combine paper and a basic lens. The end product was a portable and much less fragile than a regular microscope. Yet, it can do exactly what a microscope does: bring a much closer eye to the tiny intricacies of the world. Over the next 2 years, the colleagues built 50,000 Foldscopes. They cost less than $1 a piece to make at a time. They intended to ship them for free to kids in 130 countries. Shipping costs did add up. Their initial funding of $147,875 came from a 12-month grant from the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. There are now 3 different variations for the paper product, with 140 times magnification as the base, 340 times for older students and researchers, and as this year, a mini with 50 times magnification for kids as young as 4 or 5. Today, anyone can go online and purchase a Foldscope from Prakash website for $1.75. Kits for educators and parents include different accessories, an LED light, multiple lenses, Explorer cards for recording observations. The kits cost in the $40 to $50 range. Proceeds to help ship Foldscopes to children in low-income countries, says Prakash. So far, he says they've distributed 2 million units in 180 countries. Zooming in on ants and pollen, young Hariyash encountered the Foldscope at Eden School in the southern Indian city of Madurai. On a recent fall afternoon, Indira Pan, the school principal and social studies teacher, smiled at the excited faces of the 50 children ages 6 to 11 sitting cross-legged in a circle around her. "It's time to take out your Foldscopes," she says. The kids cheer and clap, then rush up to their school bags and pull out what appears to the untrained eye to be a folded piece of paper. They've used it to examine everything from ants to leaves to flower pollen. Building communities of Foldscope users has been as much as a priority as building distribution networks, says Prakash. That's how he met Mo Panijert, a mathematics teacher and founder of Eden School. Pan had sent Prakash a short email with the spreadsheet attached that describes the ways he'd use Foldscope, with thousands of entries, including parties at weddings and close-ups of bugs on fruits at local markets. Mo established Eden School in 1998, renovating his parents' modest 2-story home. The school in rural Muthapati is surrounded by lush green fields and brown sand. 67 students from kindergarten to grade 5 study here. Most are first-generation learners from low-income families who pay a small tuition fee. Activities using the Foldscope are an integral part of learning at Eden. Once the students have retrieved their Foldscopes from their bags, a teacher leads them out of the classroom. Under her watchful eye, over the next 20 minutes, the children rush out, looking for specimens to view through their microscopes. Some of them gently scoop up bugs, spiders, ants, and grasshoppers. Others go for leaves, sticks, and blades of grass. Pan helps the younger ones open the flaps of their Foldscopes, place their chosen specimens on top of the sticky transparent side compartment, committed to polarizing science education. In 2015, Pan and his wife set up the Eden Science Club for the students of Eden School. The following year, he became one of the 4 Foldscope Fellows across India after his initial interaction with Prakash. Over the years, Prakash gave him over 4,000 free Foldscopes to distribute as he saw fit. Each kid at Eden School gets one, and he's handed them out as workshops across India. With support from the government, philanthropists, and charities, India has received 500,000 units. What kids and researchers see. 8-year-old S. Harsha has been using the Foldscope for 2 years now. The first creature he examined was an ant. I couldn't believe how beautiful it was, he says. He says he uses the Foldscope every day and says it always teaches him something new. Ramana Rajesh Kumar, age 11, Minkashi, 8, and Magathi, 9, say that they take their Foldscopes everywhere they go so they can whip them out in case they spot something interesting. Ramana has been fascinated with bugs for a while. They look even cooler under the Foldscope, he says, especially their eyes and hairy feet. Magathi enjoys magnifying pollen grains. They look like powder, but under the Foldscope, you can see these amazing shapes, and they're split into what looks like tiny rooms, she says. Minkashi likes to examine the leaves the most. It was so exciting to see the tiny pores on the leaf called stomata, she says. It made me think, wow, so that's how plants breathe. Ramana and Magathi have moved to a new school for 6th grade. The first thing they realized was that using the Foldscope wasn't the norm in most other schools. Everyone in our old school has a Foldscope in their pockets. In our new school, no one even knows about it. That made me sad, Ramana says. And though he settled into the new school routine, Magathi says she feels like something is missing. With my old classmates, we was always comparing notes. What do you see today? What was more extraordinary than what I saw? I miss that kind of talk. And it's not just for amateurs. Some 1,400 research papers have referenced the Foldscope. Karith, a scientist at the Ahakar Research Institute at Pune, says the Foldscope has helped make his field work easier. He studies a microscopic kind of algae and collecting water samples from across the country to assess biodiversity and pollution. Carrying an expensive microscope onto the field to study each water sample can be hard, he says. The Foldscope isn't as powerful as a lab microscope, but it can let me see whether my water sample has diatoms, the microscopic algae, or not. And it's a lot of fun on impromptu trips. Former students from Eden School plan picnics and short trips where they can teach their own kids to observe the world around them with the Foldscope. I just love the look of amazement when anyone looks into the Foldscope for the first time, particularly little kids, Pan says. When their eyes light up, I know that's the moment they will embrace science and learning for the rest of their lives. Dirt cheap toys imported into the U.S. can be dangerous. Group says, here's what to know. U.S. Customs and Border Protection says it processes some 4 million de minimis shipments every day. Here, CBP officers watch as international shipments are lowered from a plane at Los Angeles International Airport. If you're tempted to buy kids' toys at rock-bottom prices online, think twice. And maybe 3 times. That $8 gift might not meet U.S. safety standards that are meant to protect kids. A lot of folks think that just because something is for sale, it must be safe. Teresa Murray, the public interest research group Consumer Watchdog, tells NPR, and that is incredibly wrong. As a spokesperson from the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission puts it, if the price seems too good to be true, this can be a sign that the product is not authentic and may be unsafe. Potential risks from kids' items range from lead and phthalate exposures to choking hazards from small parts or button-sized batteries. Flammability is also a concern. How are these cut-rate items reaching U.S. homes? When you buy a toy or any other product online and it's shipped directly to you from another country, it generally doesn't get inspected before it gets to your mailbox. Murray writes in the PIRG's Trouble in Toyland report for 2024. Items are more likely to avoid scrutiny, Murray says. If they're sent under what critics say is a loophole in U.S. law, it's the same that online realtors have used to send cheap clothes to the U.S., and that smugglers use to ship fentanyl and counterfeit drugs to the U.S. For toy sellers, this strategy helps foreign businesses undercut U.S. retailers and dodge safety requirements. The law is called de minimis. While that name implies something small, it's a big deal. Since 2014, the number of shipments entering the U.S. states, under the de minimis exception each year rose from 140 million to 1 billion in 2023, according to the White House. They now account for most of the cargo entering the U.S., according to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and the flood is only increasing. The agency processing some 4 million de minimis shipments every day. Many of the shipments come from China, and Murray emphasizes that many Chinese imports, includes toys, don't pose a problem. Only a small percentage were deemed unsafe, and those are usually sold direct to consumer, or they enter the country through de minimis shipments, she writes in her report. What is de minimis? The de minimis exception started as a way to let travelers and businesses avoid tax and import duty requirements when shipping items of little value. About 100 countries have a de minimis threshold. The amounts differ around the world. In the European Union, shipments worth less than 150 euros, about $160, can qualify. The U.S. level used to be 200, but in 2016, it rose to 800, among the highest in the world. When then President Barack Obama signed the Trade Facilitation and Trade Enforcement Act, companies that focus on the de minimis exclusion use it as a duty-free pipeline to the U.S., and they pay less taxes than an American company selling a similar product. The rule is part of the success of retailers like China's Temu, which bases its business model on streamlining the connection between manufacturers and consumers. Use and abuse of de minimis is growing. Unscrupulous exporters aggressively exploit de minimis. They widely undervalue items, for instance, or list of many items as a single shipment worth less than $800. If one egregious case from last year, a disassembled helicopter was shipped from Venezuela to the seaport in Fort Lauderdale under de minimis rules described as personal effects, according to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection report. Faced with screening a torrent of incoming packages and cargo labeled as de minimis, the CPSC says it works with the CBP to assess shipments' potential risks. flagging those most likely not to meet U.S. requirements. All children's products and toys are required to have certificates of compliance, with which affirm that these products meet our standards. The CPSC spokesperson told NPR via email, products shipped under the de minimis exemption are still subject to inspection and enforcement. They add, still the agency urges consumers to be wary of potential hazards to children when they buy items online, especially if the price is shockingly low. What can consumers do? First, the experts say, don't stray from companies you know and trust. Even if an ad for toys promises a more enticing price, we rarely come out and say you should not do this. But this is one of the exceptions, Murray says. Warning against the lure of rock-bottom prices from unfamiliar foreign retailers who advertise heavily on social media and search results. We are very strongly feel that people who are shopping online need to be a lot more careful about where they are actually buying from, she adds. They're not working with a U.S. retailer or distributor, and you just don't have that middleman to look after your interests. So we urge people, just don't shop through the ads you see on social media. The CPSC agrees that consumers need to be aware of whom they're buying from. Even if they're browsing a well-known online site, look for sold by information, the CPSC spokesperson says. If you don't recognize the seller, you may want to do more research or select another product. Consumers can also check to see if the toy is covered by a CPSC recall and check reviews on the Safer Products government site. And be sure to closely study all the images of toys, including their label and packaging, to help you avoid unsafe or counterfeit products. It's just a mess, Murray says. I mean, there can't be anything more important than our children. Bipartisan efforts push for change. Backers of de minimis say it keeps trade moving fluidly at low cost to businesses and consumers. That includes John Pickle, Senior Director for International Supply Chain Policy at the National Foreign Trade Council, who notes that the de minimis shipments are subject to the same federal screening and enforcement requirements as higher value shipments. Pickle warns that putting new limits on the de minimis would bring billions of dollars in harm, citing a recent working paper by researchers at Yale and UCLA that predicted doing away with de minimis would hurt low-income communities. But critics of de minimis say it harms those same communities by making it easier for unreliable and potentially dangerous products to reach them. De minimis is a loophole for cheap and sometimes dangerous Chinese goods, says Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican from Louisiana, in a statement to NPR. Congress needs to protect U.S. consumers from harmful Chinese trade practices, for which de minimis is the most egregious of them all, and level the playing field for small businesses. Cassidy has introduced bills to alter de minimis rules, including one co-sponsored by Senator Tammy Baldwin, Democratic of Wisconsin. Both senators plan to try again in the next Congress. The White House recently laid out new rules aiming to tamp down on the fire hose of de minimis imports, citing China-founded e-commerce platforms and its annual report to Congress. The U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission called for a permanent normal trade relations with China, a status reserved for U.S. allies. The panel said Congress should eliminate the de minimis exception for the imported items bought online. It also urged lawmakers to increase resources at CBP to help enforce the rules. Beer before liquor, busting 6 popular myths about hangovers. Is there a way to prevent unpleasant symptoms that come with heavy night of drinking? Experts weigh in common hangover myths. Hangovers cure are a dime a dozen. Guzzle a few raw eggs, take an aspirin before bed, chug a beer in the morning. Those remedies promise to banish some of the nasty symptoms that can come with drinking way too much alcohol: headache, nausea, vertigo, anxiety, or all of the above. But is there truth to any of these claims? Unfortunately, no, says Dr. Ryan Marino, a medical toxicologist and an emergency physician at University Hospital's Cleveland Medical Center. I wish there was some magic drink everyone could have, but there isn't. The only surefire way to prevent a hangover is to abstain from drinking, he says. And once you have a hangover, the only thing that will get over it is time. If you plan to drink alcohol and want to reduce potential symptoms, practice moderation, he says. That means limiting your alcohol intake to 1 drink a day or less for women and 2 drinks a day or less for men, according to the Department of Health and Human Services. Experts break down the science behind the 6 common hangover myths and explain how alcohol affects your body. Myth: all hangovers are the same. The symptoms and severity of your hangover, like your alcohol tolerance, depends on many factors, says Marino. That includes age, weight, gender, ethnicity, family history, nutritional status, smoker status, mood, health conditions, or whether you're taking any medications. Your hangover is going to be different from everyone else you know. He says, for example, while one person might experience headaches and vomiting after just 1 drink, another one might throw back whiskey gingers all night and wake up feeling tired, but otherwise unscathed. In fact, some people may not experience any symptoms. According to one study, about 25% of people who drink to intoxication don't have hangovers at all. The length of hangovers can also vary. They can last 24 hours or longer, depending on how much you drank, according to the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. Myth: you can prevent a hangover by drinking water or using hydration supplements. Alcohol increases urine production, so it's true that dehydration can often contribute to the hurt of a hangover. But that's one symptom of over-imbibing, says Marino. Drinking can cause inflammation, gastrointestinal irritation, disrupted sleep, and low blood sugar. It also exposes you to acetaldehyde, a toxic byproduct produced when your body metabolizes alcohol that can damage your cells and tissues. Don't expect products like sports drinks, vitamin-infused patches, or hydration packets to work any miracles before or after a night on the town, says Marino. While they may keep you hydrated, they likely won't address any other hangover symptoms. But drinking water or other hydrating beverages during a night out is still a good idea, he says. It can help you practice moderation and remind you to space out your drinks. Myth: a hair of the dog can stop a hangover in its tracks. Some people think that a hair of a dog, an alcoholic beverage consumed the morning after a night of heavy drinking, can help cure a hangover. It may offer some temporary relief by raising your alcohol levels and masking symptoms like jitteriness or anxiety, says Marino, but your hangover is just going to be pushed down the road. A hangover can be a mild form of alcohol withdrawal, according to NIAAA. Hangover symptoms peak and likely feel their worst when the body's blood alcohol concentration returns to zero. Eventually, the Bloody Mary you had at brunch will leave your system, and you'll have to deal with the aftermath. You're not doing yourself any favor by piling on, says Marino. Myth: beer before liquor, never been sicker. Liquor before beer in the clear. Some people swear by this adage, but in general, it's not the order of alcohol that determines the severity of your hangover, says Marino. It's how much you consume. You're likely to drink more alcohol in a shorter amount of time if you kick off your night with hard liquor, he says. It makes you inebriated faster, and you may feel inclined to drink more than you would, slowly sipping a beer. Some kinds of liquors may make hangovers more unpleasant, according to research. Dark liquors like bourbon and brandy contain higher levels of congeners, or the chemicals produced during the fermentation process that give an alcohol its distinctive taste, smell, and color. Generally speaking, the more congeners an alcohol has, the worse the hangover is likely to be. Myth: taking painkillers before bed can help you get ahead of hangover symptoms. While it's common practice to reach for over-the-counter pain relievers to try and minimize your headache in the morning, Marino says you could potentially do a lot more harm than good. Consuming just one alcoholic drink a day with non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like Advil, Aleve or aspirin can increase your risk of gastrointestinal bleeding by 37%, according to the NIAAA. When you combine alcohol with drugs containing acetaminophen, like Tylenol, you run the risk of liver damage, according to the NIAAA. Ingesting too much of one or both substances can be toxic to the liver. For that reason, the Food and Drug Administration advises against drinking when taking any medicine that includes acetaminophen. If you're taking any type of medication, proceed with caution, says Marino. Even if your medication doesn't have a label that says do not take with alcohol, that doesn't mean you can't be affected. Hangover symptoms are physical. It can also affect your mental health. Drinking too much can make you feel overwhelmed, irritated, or on edge. And there's a term for it that's been trending on social media: hangxiety. While alcohol can initially have a calming effect, your body can rebound as it leaves your system, causing a surge in adrenaline, a racing heartbeat, or feelings of worry or stress, says Dr. Zinga Harrison, a physician specializing in psychiatry and addiction medicine. It's a tricky symptom to identify. You can experience anxiety after even just one drink, says Harrison, and it can come from physical symptoms or without physical symptoms at all. To combat anxiety, Harrison suggests doing activities to bring down your adrenaline levels, like mindfulness and meditation, and bring up your dopamine, like spending time with friends and getting lots of sunshine. And while the only way to fully prevent anxiety and hangovers is to abstain from alcohol, she says it helps to go into social situations in the best possible headspace. Before you go to that party, drink water, eat well, and make sure you're surrounded by people who make you feel positive and connected. All of that biologically and psychologically may not prevent the anxiety entirely, but will decrease the severity of the anxiety, says Harrison.